Hey there, pause for a moment and look around you. How much of your precious time today did you spend scrolling through other people's lives? Yes, I'm talking to you. We're all guilty of it, comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. But what if I told you this habit is stealing your life's greatest potential? Look, I've been exactly where you are, constantly looking over the fence, wondering why my grass isn't as green, my flowers not as vibrant. But today, I'm going to share something that completely transformed my understanding of focus and fulfillment. Have you ever heard of the parable of the distracted gardener? This ancient wisdom isn't just some story. It's a mirror reflecting back the very reason many of us feel stuck while watching others thrive. In the next few minutes, I promise you'll discover why focusing on your own garden is the only path to true growth. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your neighbor's garden the same way again. Are you ready to reclaim your attention and transform your life? Then listen closely to this powerful tale. There once lived a young gardener named Kai, who inherited a beautiful plot of land from his ancestors. This garden had rich soil, perfect sunlight, and a gentle stream flowing nearby, everything needed for extraordinary growth. But Kai had a restless mind. Each morning, instead of working in his own garden, he would walk through the village, stopping to admire the gardens of others. "Look at Lin's magnificent roses," he would say with a sigh. "And Chun's vegetables grow so tall and strong. My garden could never compare to these." Day after day, Kai spent hours watching others tend their lands, making mental notes of their techniques and admiring their results. One afternoon, after spending the entire morning observing his neighbor's flourishing cherry trees, Kai finally returned to his own garden. What he found shocked him deeply. Weeds had overtaken the paths, the soil had hardened from neglect, and the few plants that remained looked withered and sad. In his obsession with others' success, he had completely abandoned his own potential. That evening, as Kai sat despondent at the edge of his neglected land, an old teacher from the village happened to walk by. Seeing Kai's distress, the teacher sat beside him in silence for some time before speaking. "Each garden requires the full attention of its keeper," the teacher finally said. "The flowers you admire in other gardens didn't grow from occasional glances. They blossomed through daily care and presence." The teacher picked up a small stone and continued, "If you place this stone in your neighbor's garden, nothing changes for you. If you use it to mark where you'll plant tomorrow in your own garden, you've taken the first step toward transformation." Kai listened carefully and felt something shift within him. The next morning, for the first time in months, he didn't leave to tour the village. Instead, he woke before sunrise and began clearing a small corner of his garden. The work was harder than he expected after so much neglect, but by midday, he had prepared one small bed for planting. Day by day, Kai continued this practice. Sometimes he would remember his neighbor's beautiful gardens and feel discouraged, but he would quickly return his attention to the task before him. "This is my garden," he would remind himself, "and only I can tend it." Months passed with this dedicated attention. Kai learned to notice the specific needs of his unique plot, how certain areas needed more water, how some plants thrived in the shady corners where nothing grew in his neighbor's gardens. He discovered that his land had perfect conditions for herbs that struggled elsewhere in the village. By the time the autumn festival arrived, Kai's garden had transformed. It didn't look exactly like anyone else's. It had its own character, its own strengths. The herbs he grew had become sought after for their exceptional flavor. Several villagers now stopped by his garden to admire his work and learn from his approach. One day, the old teacher visited again and found Kai happily working among his thriving plants. "I see you've discovered the secret," the teacher said with a smile. "Yes," Kai replied. "My garden isn't perfect, and it's different from everyone else's. But it's mine to tend, and that makes all the difference. The teacher nodded. And now you understand that the time you spend looking over the fence is time taken from nurturing what's been entrusted to you. Your life is your garden. From that day forward, Kai occasionally visited other gardens, but not with envy or comparison, rather with appreciation for their unique beauty while remaining committed to his own path. He had learned the first essential lesson in focusing on his own life. Now that we understand how focusing on others' gardens distracts us from tending our own, let's explore why this happens in the first place. There's a reason our minds get trapped in the cycle of comparison, and ancient wisdom identified 3 specific mental habits that act like poisons in our lives. These 3 poisons work together, creating a toxic cycle that keeps us forever looking outward instead of inward. The first poison begins with a simple thought: I wish I had what they have. We see someone with a bigger house, a more exciting career, or even just a seemingly perfect family photo, and suddenly our own life feels lacking. This wanting mind creates a constant hunger that can never be satisfied because there will always be someone who appears to have more. Maya discovered this first poison when she started her small coffee shop. Instead of enjoying her early success, she spent hours scrolling through photos of other cafes with fancier decorations and trendier menus. If only my shop looked like that, she thought daily, then I'd be truly successful. Despite loyal customers who loved her simple, homemade approach, Maya couldn't appreciate what she had built because she was too busy wanting what others displayed online. The second poison is more subtle, but equally harmful. It's the belief that what we see of others' lives shows the complete picture. Maya convinced herself that the cafe she admired never struggled with difficult customers or supplier problems. In her mind, their success came easily while she alone faced challenges. This illusion of perfection in others' lives blinds us to a simple truth. Behind every highlight reel lies countless moments of difficulty, doubt, and ordinary struggle. One morning, Maya happened to arrive at her supplier's warehouse just as the owner of her most admired competitor was leaving. The woman looked exhausted, with coffee stains on her shirt and worry lines on her face. They started talking, and Maya was shocked to learn that this perfect cafe was barely staying afloat financially. I spend so much on keeping up appearances that I can barely pay myself, the woman admitted. Some days I wish I had started simple like you did. The third poison is perhaps the most dangerous, the rejection of our own reality. When we constantly compare ourselves to others, we begin to resent our own circumstances, talents, and unique path. We stop seeing our strengths because we're too focused on what we perceive as weaknesses. After her encounter at the warehouse, Maya began to notice how she had been poisoning her own happiness. While fixating on creating the perfect cafe like those she saw online, she had been ignoring the special qualities that made her place unique. The community feel, the extra care she put into each cup, the way she remembered every regular customer's name and story. An elderly customer who came every morning for tea helped Maya see through this third poison. "I've tried all the fancy new places," he told her, "but I come here because it feels real. Those other cafes might look nice in pictures, but they don't have what makes this place special." He gestured to the simple space around them. This is authenticity, not a performance. The wisdom of his words struck Maya deeply. She had been so busy comparing her cafe to others that she failed to recognize its unique value. In rejecting her own reality, she had poisoned her ability to appreciate what was right in front of her. The antidote to these three poisons is surprisingly simple, yet profoundly powerful: gratitude. When Maya began each morning by appreciating what she had built rather than longing for what others appeared to have, the poisons gradually lost their power. She started a small ritual of writing down 3 things she appreciated about her cafe before opening each day. Some days, she wrote about the quality of her coffee beans, other days about the morning light through her windows, and sometimes about the community that had formed around her tables. This practice didn't eliminate her awareness of other cafes or her desire to improve, but it transformed how she approached them. Instead of poisoning her mind with comparison, she could now look at others with appreciation while remaining rooted in gratitude for her own unique path. Once we've stopped comparing ourselves to others and found gratitude for our own journey, we can begin the most important exploration of all, the path to knowing ourselves. But how do we truly get to know who we are beneath all the noise? David faced this question after recovering from a climbing accident that left him unable to continue his career as a professional athlete. For years, his entire identity had been wrapped up in being David the Climber. His social media was filled with spectacular mountain conquests, and his friends were mostly fellow climbers. When the accident happened, he didn't just lose his career. He lost his sense of who he was. Who am I if I'm not climbing? He asked himself daily, scrolling through photos of his former life while lying in his recovery bed. The question haunted him, but it also opened the door to something powerful, the journey of self-discovery. David's healing journey began when an old friend gave him a simple practice: to sit quietly for 10 minutes each morning and simply observe his thoughts without trying to change them. Just watch what happens in your mind like you're watching clouds pass in the sky, his friend suggested. At first, David found this incredibly difficult. His mind raced with frustrations about his injury, fears about the future, and constant comparisons to his past self. But each day, he simply observed these thoughts without judgment, noting them as they appeared. There's anger, there's worry, there's a memory. After several weeks of this practice, David began to notice something interesting. He could see patterns in his thinking that had always been there, but that he'd never noticed before. He realized how much of his self-worth had been tied to achievement and external validation. More importantly, he started to recognize that these thoughts weren't actually who he was. They were just passing events in his awareness. I'm not my thoughts, he realized one morning. I'm the one watching them. This simple insight changed everything. As David continued his practice, he extended this watchful awareness to daily activities. While making tea, he would notice the sensations of pouring water, the steam rising, the warmth of the cup in his hands. This attention to ordinary moments, what some call mindfulness, helped him stay anchored in the present rather than constantly drifting to thoughts of his lost future or glorious past. Through this regular practice, David began identifying thought patterns that pulled him away from peace. He noticed how often his mind created stories about what others thought of him now that he wasn't successful anymore. He saw how these assumptions caused him unnecessary suffering. Simply recognizing these patterns as they happened gave him the space to let them go rather than being controlled by them. The most challenging part of David's journey came when he had to face his own limitations with compassion. For months, he had pushed himself in physical therapy, getting angry when his body couldn't perform as it once did. His therapist noticed his frustration and offered gentle advice. Try approaching your body as you would a good friend who's doing their best. This shift from harsh judgment to kind acceptance was transformative. David began acknowledging his progress, however small, and treating himself with the same compassion he would offer a struggling friend. It's okay to have limits, he told himself. Everyone does. As David continued walking this path of self-knowledge, he gradually developed wisdom about what was within his power to change and what wasn't. He couldn't return to professional climbing, but he could mentor young climbers. He couldn't conquer mountains anymore, but he could teach others about safety and respect for nature. This distinction between what we can and cannot change is one of life's most valuable lessons. 1 year after his accident, David's life looked nothing like he had expected. Yet he found himself surprisingly at peace. By sitting with his thoughts, staying present in daily moments, identifying harmful mental patterns, accepting his limitations with compassion, and focusing on what he could change, he had discovered a self far deeper than David the Climber. He had found something more enduring, his true nature beyond all labels and achievements. As we focus on our own lives, a question naturally arises. How do I balance caring for myself with caring for others? This is what Lisa wondered as she watched her elderly mother's health decline. For years, Lisa had put everyone else's needs before her own. Her children, her husband, her work team, and now her mother. She never missed a school event or family dinner, always volunteered for extra projects at work, and spent weekends helping her mother with housework and doctor appointments. "I'm doing everything right," she thought one evening as she drove home exhausted. "So why do I feel so empty?" The answer came from an unexpected place, a conversation with her mother during their next visit. Lisa arrived looking tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Her mother took one look at her and said something surprising. "You know, dear, when a tree gives too much of itself without receiving nourishment, eventually it has nothing left to offer." This simple observation opened Lisa's eyes to an important truth. We are all connected like threads in a vast tapestry, each affecting the others. This understanding of interdependence reveals that caring for ourselves isn't selfish. It's necessary if we want to truly be there for others. "But how do I balance everything?" Lisa asked her mother. "There are so many people who need me." Her mother smiled and shared a piece of wisdom. Think of yourself as a garden with a fence around it. The fence doesn't stop you from sharing your flowers and fruits with others. It simply defines what's yours to tend and what belongs to others. Lisa began to see how she had been jumping over everyone else's fences, weeding their gardens while her own withered. Setting healthy boundaries didn't mean caring less about others. It meant recognizing where her responsibility began and ended. She started with small changes. When her adult son called asking her to babysit on short notice for the third time that week, she gently explained that she needed the evening for herself. To her surprise, he figured out another solution. At work, she stopped volunteering for every extra project and focused on doing her core responsibilities excellently. The most difficult boundary to establish was with her mother. With guidance from a counselor, Lisa realized she could support her mother while also honoring her own needs. She arranged for professional help several days a week, giving herself breathing room while ensuring her mother received proper care. As Lisa created these boundaries, she discovered something unexpected: space to uncover her unique purpose. For years, she'd been so busy responding to others' needs that she'd never asked herself what truly called to her heart. During the quiet evenings she now protected, Lisa rediscovered her love for painting, something she'd abandoned decades ago when family life became busy. She set up a small studio in her spare room and began creating vibrant canvases filled with the landscapes of her childhood. The more she painted, the more alive she felt. This wasn't merely a hobby, it was her personal dharma, her unique contribution. Soon she was teaching a weekly art class at the senior center where her mother lived, bringing joy to residents who had few creative outlets. Lisa discovered that true transformation begins within. By nurturing her own well-being and pursuing her authentic path, she created ripples that touched everyone around her. Her family members became more self-sufficient. Her colleagues respected her boundaries. The seniors in her art class found new purpose through creativity. Even her relationship with her mother deepened as they shared the painting sessions. The most profound change happened in Lisa herself. She learned that loving kindness must begin with self-compassion. Each morning, she started her day with a simple practice, placing her hand on her heart and saying, "May I be well, may I be happy, may I live with ease." Only after extending this wish to herself would she then extend it outward. May others be well, may others be happy, may others live with ease. This wasn't selfishness but balance, understanding that she could only give authentically from a place of fullness, not depletion. By honoring her responsibility to herself, alongside her connections to others, Lisa finally found the middle path between isolation and self-sacrifice. After learning to focus on our own garden, recognize the poisons of comparison, develop self-knowledge, and balance our responsibilities, we arrive at the final lesson: embracing our unique journey without comparing it to anyone else's path. This wisdom came to life through the story of two friends who entered the monastery on the same day. Jin and Leon arrived at the mountain temple together, both eager to learn from the renowned teacher who lived there. They made their vows on the same morning, received identical robes, and were assigned adjacent sleeping mats in the dormitory. From the outside, their journeys appeared identical, but from the very first day, their experiences diverged dramatically. Jin took to meditation naturally. Even during the first week, he could sit completely still for an hour, his mind quickly settling into a peaceful state. The senior monks nodded approvingly as they passed by his cushion. Meanwhile, Lian struggled terribly. His legs ached, his back burned, and his mind raced like a wild horse. After just 15 minutes, he would find himself drowning in thoughts and fighting the urge to jump up and run away. "I'm failing," Leon whispered to Jin one evening after practice. "You're progressing so quickly while I can barely sit for 20 minutes. Perhaps I'm not meant for this path." Jin smiled gently at his friend. "The master told me something yesterday that might help you," he said. "Each river finds its own way to the sea. Some travel straight paths through open valleys, while others must carve through mountains and twist through canyons. But all eventually reach the same destination." This simple metaphor stayed with Leon. The next morning, instead of watching Jin and feeling discouraged, he decided to focus only on his own experience, allowing his practice to unfold naturally like a river finding its course. This subtle shift, from comparison to acceptance, changed everything. Months passed, and both friends continued their training. Though they lived side by side, they eventually realized they were having completely different experiences. Jin excelled in meditation but struggled with the communal work periods. Lian, meanwhile, found deep joy in the simple daily tasks of cooking and gardening, discovering that these activities brought him the mindfulness that seemed so elusive on the cushion. One autumn day, the head of the monastery summoned both young monks. The community had expectations for Jin and Lian based on their family backgrounds. Jin came from a long line of scholars, while Lian's family had been successful merchants for generations. The monastery needed someone to travel to the city to manage donations and supplies, and someone else to stay and preserve the ancient texts. "Jin, with your scholar background, you would be perfect to maintain our library," the head monk suggested. "And Lian, your family's business experience makes you ideal for handling our city affairs." Both young monks felt their hearts sink at these suggestions, which completely contradicted their natural inclinations. After a moment of silence, Jin spoke first. "With respect, Master, I've discovered that sitting still with text all day leaves me restless and unhappy. My greatest peace comes when I'm active and engaging with people." Leon nodded and added, "And I found that while my family thrived in busy markets, I feel most centered in quiet contemplation and simple tasks. The thought of city negotiations fills me with dread." To their surprise, the master smiled broadly. "Excellent. You have passed an important test. Had you followed the expectations of your families and our assumptions, you would have been living someone else's path. By speaking your truth, you have honored your unique journey." This experience taught Jin and Lian the danger of external expectations. Whether from family, society, or even spiritual communities, these pressures can pull us away from our authentic path. True freedom comes from liberating ourselves from what others think we should be or do. As they continued their training, both monks developed patience with their own pace. Jin learned to celebrate Lian's growing insights from contemplative practice, while Lian appreciated Jin's natural charisma and ability to connect with visitors. They stopped comparing their progress and instead appreciated how their different strengths created balance in the community. They also learned to notice and celebrate small victories rather than fixating on massive achievements. Jin began keeping a simple journal where he noted one small realization or moment of growth each day. Leon developed a practice of pausing each evening to acknowledge one way he had moved forward, no matter how tiny the step seemed. Years later, when new students arrived struggling with the same comparisons, both friends would share what they had learned. Peace comes not from racing alongside others, but from following your unique rhythm, honoring the journey that belongs to you alone. True freedom isn't reaching some destination ahead of others. It's experiencing the profound contentment that arises when you live your own life authentically. Double quotes. Her mother smiled and shared a piece of wisdom. Think of yourself as a garden with a fence around it. The fence doesn't stop you from sharing your flowers and fruits with others. It simply defines what's yours to tend and what belongs to others. Lisa began to see how she had been jumping over everyone else's fences, weeding their gardens while her own withered. Setting healthy boundaries didn't mean caring less about others. It meant recognizing where her responsibility began and ended. She started with small changes. When her adult son called asking her to babysit on short notice for the third time that week, she gently explained that she needed the evening for herself. To her surprise, he figured out another solution. At work, she stopped volunteering for every extra project and focused on doing her core responsibilities excellently. The most difficult boundary to establish was with her mother. With guidance from a counselor, Lisa realized she could support her mother while also honoring her own needs. She arranged for professional help several days a week, giving herself breathing room while ensuring her mother received proper care. As Lisa created these boundaries, she discovered something unexpected: space to uncover her unique purpose. For years, she'd been so busy responding to others' needs that she'd never asked herself what truly called to her heart. During the quiet evenings she now protected, Lisa rediscovered her love for painting, something she'd abandoned decades ago when family life became busy. She set up a small studio in her spare room and began creating vibrant canvases filled with the landscapes of her childhood. The more she painted, the more alive she felt. This wasn't merely a hobby. It was her personal dharma, her unique contribution. Soon she was teaching a weekly art class at the senior center where her mother lived, bringing joy to residents who had few creative outlets. Lisa discovered that true transformation begins within. By nurturing her own well-being and pursuing her authentic path, she created ripples that touched everyone around her. Her family members became more self-sufficient. Her colleagues respected her boundaries. The seniors in her art class found new purpose through creativity. Even her relationship with her mother deepened as they shared the painting sessions. The most profound change happened in Lisa herself. She learned that loving kindness must begin with self-compassion. Each morning, she started her day with a simple practice, placing her hand on her heart and saying, "May I be well, may I be happy, may I live with ease." Only after extending this wish to herself would she then extend it outward. May others be well. May others be happy. May others live with ease. This wasn't selfishness, but balance. Understanding that she could only give authentically from a place of fullness, not depletion. By honoring her responsibility to herself alongside her connections to others, Lisa finally found the middle path between isolation and self-sacrifice.